All right, let's dive in. Today, we are tackling a subject so huge it's almost hard to wrap your head around: the entire history of planet Earth. We're going to take billions of years of chaos, creation, and life and squeeze it all into the next few minutes. It's going to be a wild ride through deep time, so let's get started. First things first, you have to appreciate the scale we're dealing with. 4.6 billion years. That number is so massive, our brains aren't really built to understand it. This isn't just history like we learn in school. Scientists have a special name for this kind of timescale. They call it deep time. I mean, to put that into perspective, for us to get through this story in just a few minutes, every single word I say has to cover about 2 million years of history. Yeah, so you can see we've got to move pretty fast. So how do we make sense of this? Well, we're going to use a little trick, an analogy. Let's imagine Earth's entire 4.6 billion year history is squeezed into a single 12-hour day. This geologic clock is going to be our map for this incredible journey. Okay, so our story starts right at the beginning, in what's called the Hadean Eon. And the name says it all. It comes from Hades. And for good reason. This was, and I mean this literally, hell on Earth. There were no rocks, no water, just a seething, violent, molten planet. So how did this all even begin? Well, it all started with the death of a star. A nearby star went supernova, exploding and sending out this massive shockwave. Think of that wave like a cosmic snowplow, gathering up this huge cloud of dust and gas. Then gravity just takes over, pulling all those particles together in a process they call accretion. And these clumps just get bigger and bigger, until eventually you have our sun, you have Earth, and all the other planets in our solar system. Now, when Earth was still a young, molten ball, it got hit by something huge. A protoplanet about the size of Mars, which scientists have named Theia, smashed into it. It wasn't a head-on collision, more of a glancing blow, but the impact was so powerful it literally tore a huge chunk of Earth's material and flung it out into orbit. And over time, all that debris cooled down, came together, and became our moon. And the Hadean Eon wasn't done yet. It ended with this grand, violent finale. As the giant planets like Uranus and Neptune were shifting their orbits, their gravity basically acted like a slingshot, flinging a storm of asteroids from the asteroid belt right toward the inner planets. Earth just got pummeled, adding more mass, more heat, and keeping the surface a roiling sea of lava. After all that fire and fury, the planet finally started to cool down. And this brought us into the Archean and Proterozoic eons. And this was an incredibly long period. We're talking nearly 2 billion years, where the stage was just slowly, and I mean painstakingly, being set for life. Just look at this timeline. It shows you just how slow everything was. Life actually showed up pretty quickly in the oceans, but it was just simple, single-celled microbes. Then they invented something that would change everything: photosynthesis. But then things really slowed down. For a full billion years, it seems like not much happened at all. Now, here's a wild thought for you. We think of oxygen as, essential. We need it to live. But for the very first living things on our planet, it was the exact opposite. So you have to ask yourself, is oxygen a poison? And for that early life, the answer was a resounding yes. See those first little microbes doing photosynthesis? They were pumping out oxygen as a waste product. For all the other life on the planet, which was anaerobic, this was basically a global pollution catastrophe. The arrival of oxygen caused the planet's very first mass extinction. After that oxygen crisis, Earth settled into this long period of quiet that scientists have playfully nicknamed the boring billion. The climate was stable, the continents weren't moving much, and evolution seemed to be on pause. But don't let that name fool you, because it was in this quiet, stable incubator that some really crucial things, like sexual reproduction, probably evolved. It was laying the groundwork for everything that was about to come. So what was it that finally woke the planet up from its billion-year nap? The answer is the engine of our planet, plate tectonics. As Earth kept cooling, its crust hardened and cracked into these huge plates that started to move around, crashing into each other, grinding past each other. And the impact of this was absolutely revolutionary. These moving plates threw up gigantic mountain ranges. Then, rain and ice would wear those mountains down, washing all these essential nutrients, the building blocks for more complicated life, down into the oceans. This planetary nutrient pump is what finally kicked things into high gear, ended the boring billion, and fueled the next great leap. So, we finally arrived in our modern eon, the Phanerozoic, which means visible life. And boy, does it start with a bang. This is one of the most incredible events in the entire history of our planet. It's called the Cambrian explosion. And in what amounts to a geological blink of an eye, the oceans went from being filled with simple little blobs to just teeming with this bizarre, wonderful, complex variety of animals. Pretty much every major animal body plan that exists today got its start right here. What was happening was nothing less than a biological arms race. Predators evolved things like jaws and teeth. So, in response, prey evolved hard shells and legs to get away. The invention of the eye changed everything, turning the oceans from a placid soup into this high-stakes world of hunter and hunted. From there, life's conquest of the planet just continued. About 470 million years ago, plants made the huge jump from the ocean to land, turning the continents green. Much later came the dinosaurs, who would end up dominating this planet for over 150 million years, right up until a massive asteroid slammed into the Earth and ended their reign about 66 million years ago. And that brings us, after this incredible 4.5 billion year journey, to the very, very last moment. A moment that's being dominated by a completely new force of nature on this planet, us. Remember that 12-hour clock we started with? Okay, so if Earth formed at midnight, the first complex animals of the Cambrian explosion didn't show up until around 10:30 at night. The dinosaurs were gone by 11:40 p.m. And humanity? All of our history, our art, our civilizations, all of it appears in the last 2 seconds before midnight. 2 seconds. Our impact in those 2 seconds has been so massive that some scientists are now arguing that we've pushed the planet into a whole new geologic epoch, the Anthropocene, which means the age of humans. And they suggest it started right around the middle of the 20th century, after World War II, when our influence really went global. So what's the evidence for that? Well, scientists point to things that are going to leave a permanent mark in the rock record for millions of years. Things like a layer of plastic waste being fused into the rock, a sudden, sharp spike in global temperatures, and what many are now calling the planet's sixth mass extinction, all driven by our activities. And that brings our whole story right up to today. We've gone from a molten rock to a planet absolutely teeming with life, and now to a world being shaped by a single species. It really leaves us with a final question to think about. As we get better at finding other Earth-like worlds out there among the stars, what might their stories teach us about the deep past and the possible future of our own pale blue dot?